Whew. First of all, let's breathe because that game did not need to be that chaotic, did not need to be that end to end. After the fantastic first half that we had, where we should have been 3-0 up, the fact the game became that to end with, and I mean, I say we get out of jail with the penalty at the end, but we still did enough to win the game, and ultimately I felt that we deserved to win the game. But the fact that we let the second half get that chaos, Man United, can you just win a game 3-0 and make it nice? Can you just please win a game 3-0 and make it nice? Because we should have been 3-0 up at half time, and it was a fantastic first half. But the second half, it's a bit like Fulham. We should have been 2-0 up at half time versus Fulham. We played well versus Arsenal. But the second half today was bad. And look, the most important thing is the 3 points. I am so happy we got the 3 points. We needed that going into national break. We need that on the scoreboard because I don't want to be joking about relegation battles. I don't think I'd even be joking. We don't win a lot. We have relegation form since Amorim has come in. But look, had we dropped points today, I think it mostly would have been on the players. Xerxes should have scored. Ahmad should have scored. Sesko almost scored a header late. We honestly could have scored about 6 goals today with the chances we had. And also, Bayendier shouldn't have let that second one in. It doesn't matter who plays in goal, they're both crap. Bayendier's distribution was quite good today. I'll give him credit for that. And, other than corners, Bayendier is all right. We're definitely a weakness there. So hopefully, by the time we play our next game, Lamens will be in the door. We definitely need Baleba as well. But I've got concerns. I think the players were mostly at fault today. Because of the chances missed and Bayendier. And I felt the way that we played in the first half was phenomenal. And we've seen a good performance versus Arsenal, a good first half versus Fulham, a good first half versus Burnley. But what worries me is Fulham changed their approach in the second half. Burnley changed their approach in the second half, and Amorim didn't have an answer for that. The reason we were so good in that first half versus Burnley is because Burnley sat deep, didn't press us, let us have a lot of space. That's what Fulham did as well. Then Marco Silva said it last week after the game. Marco Silva basically said after the game last week, if you sort of target their midfield too and you look to press Manchester United high, it causes them trouble. What did Burnley do? That's exactly what Burnley did. And the second half was chaotic. And what worries me is I feel that Amorim, brilliant stuff in the first half, fantastic. I wouldn't have blamed Amorim today had we dropped points. But Amorim doesn't have an answer to how Fulham responded in the second half, to how Burnley responded in the second half. Because I know we won the game, but Burnley could have won that game. And Burnley wouldn't have deserved to win that game based off the first half that we had, and we can blame the players for missing the chances and blame the goalkeeper all we want. But it was the fact that we never really got control in that second half versus Burnley. We never really looked like scoring in that second half versus Fulham. And I felt that the manager had no answers to that. I felt what I wanted to see happen, because I thought Casemiro had a good game today, was he took Casemiro off for Sesko, and I liked that he went attacking. But if you take off that midfielder, you lose control in the middle of the park, which we did. And I would have rather him taken off one of the centre-backs, gone to a back four, and put Sesko on the pitch, because I felt that Casemiro was our only DM and giving us a bit of control. But look, there's a lot of positives. We won the game. That's the most important thing. And the first half I was really enjoying. I was just frustrated. And the reason I was so frustrated in the first half was because I knew that the second half was probably going to be like this. I knew that we should be 3-0 up at half-time, and I knew that we were going to make it not count. And the second half was not nice. And that's the frustrating thing. Could have been 2-0 up versus Fulham in 20 minutes. Could have been 3-0 up at Burnley versus half-time. Could have scored a goal or two versus Arsenal. We need to make those count. And that was my biggest concern. But I want to start with the positives in Mbeumo. He was incredible today. He was my man of the match. I thought Mason Mount was really good when he was on the pitch. Maybe he got injured. I thought Bruno had a really good first half. I think he was bad in the second half. But I think the reason Bruno was bad in the second half is not because of Bruno. I think that we just got bad in the second half because we lost control, because Burnley adapted. People are forgetting the second half was bad because Burnley adapted. We were doing the exact same thing in the second half. It was Burnley adapted, and we didn't have an answer of how to play against that. But Mbeumo was fantastic today. 3 shots, 5 chances created, and he was quality in every single action he made. Him and Ahmad were doing well. He was the man of the match. I'm glad he scored, but he should have had 2 assists. He put a really good cross in for the Ahmad volley, and then he put a really good... No, I think that was Bruno actually put the cross in for the Ahmad volley. But he put a really good ball into Ahmad that Ahmad should have scored. And Mbeumo could have had... I think it was the Bruno volley he put a good cross in for. And Mbeumo could have had 2 assists today. He seriously could have had 2 assists today. I thought he was fantastic. And I was sitting there when it was 2-2 thinking, Mbeumo deserves to play for a better club. I thought he was unbelievable. I think you can see how much quality there is there. And look, we know in Cunha and Mbeumo we have signed quality. I always was hyping up the signing because in Cunha and Mbeumo, you've got Premier League proven quality, and we saw that today. 2 goals in his last 2 games from Mbeumo, should have had 2 assists. He has the quality. Versus Arsenal, he was very good. It's a shame that Cunha's come off injured because I actually thought across the first 4 games of the season, up until he came off injured, that Cunha was probably the brightest spark. I know he hasn't got the goals or assists yet, but I felt in Arsenal game he was a spark. I felt in the Fulham game he could have scored 2 in the first half. I thought versus Grimsby, despite the penalty miss, he's one of the better players, and I thought that he started the game well. It's very disappointing that Cunha had come off injured because I thought he was one of the brightest sparks. But look, you've got players like Xerxes and Mount that can play in the left hand, Sesko that can play striker. A lot of people concerned about Sesko. I'm not worried about Sesko. We didn't give him any service. Then he had 2 headers late on. Maybe he could have hit the target. But I think with Sesko, I think if Sesko had played in that first half, I think Cunha was very good, but I think if Sesko played in that first half, I think he would have seen a bit more of Sesko. The problem with Sesko is when we've played him, the team around him's been bad. We've brought him on in the second half versus Fulham when we weren't playing well. The second half today when we weren't playing well, Grimsby when we weren't playing well. I think if we actually had Sesko starting from the off when we actually played well, it could be a bit different. But I'm not worried about Sesko. He's a young player. It's moulding him in. I don't think Xerxes had the best game. I thought he started all right with his touches, but I think he was a little bit wasteful. And I think there were sometimes I wanted Xerxes in the box. I think you can see that he's not an out-and-out 9 with his box movement. And I'm a big fan of Joshua Xerxes. But I think the main positives for me was Ahmad. I think Ahmad frustrated me a little bit in the second half. A little bit. He was giving the ball away, but I thought Ahmad was really good in the first half. And I think for the most part, Ahmad and Mbeumo linked up well. I thought, when Mazraoui came on, I was like, why is he bringing Mazraoui on? But actually, that worked quite well because that resulted in the penalty. We know with Mazraoui, Yoro, Ahmad, and Mbeumo, we've got some technical players on that right-hand side. It was good to see him bring Maino on and not Agate, but the problem was he brings Maino on, and and Burnley have completely adjusted their tactics. So had Maino played in that first half, would have been a brilliant game for him. But the fact that Burnley completely changed how they played in the second half wasn't the game for Maino. And look, Ruben Amorim's not to know that. But yeah, I have to say, we've got to be positive about Mbeumo. And look, we deserve to win. Like, at the end of the day, there is going to be questions over the manager still, because it wasn't the most convincing win, but we did deserve to win. Look at the statistics, 3.54 XG to their 1.2, 26 shots to their 6. I thought the second half was horrific. The first half was amazing, should have been 3-0 up, and what we saw in the first half was fantastic, and, we praise Amorim for that. I thought the second half was horrific. If we'd have dropped points, I would have put 80% of the blame on the players for missing chances and Bayern. But I felt that Amorim, and my only concern with Amorim is I don't think he had a complete answer to what was going wrong in the second half. I think we were still doing the same thing, and it was, okay, they're going to overload the midfield and they're going to press us high, and that way we can't control the game because they know how we want to play. And I think we just need a little bit more adaptability there from the manager. As I said, I wouldn't sack Amorim. I said I'm frustrated with Amorim. I'm concerned around Amorim. The reason I said I wouldn't sack Amorim is because we're 3 games into the season, and financially it would be ridiculous to sack a manager 3 games into the season that we've just backed. And I do think if you brought him a midfielder with unbelievable legs that can play DM and a goalkeeper, I would like to see what Amorim could do with those 2 signings in the door once he's got everything that he needs. And I think financially we can't sack a manager after 3 games. But even though we won, and even though I think if we had dropped points, most of the blame would be on the players, there was concerns in the second half and some of the calls and how easy it was for Burnley in that second half, and how we're at Old Trafford and we made it difficult. Like, I'm happy we won. I'm happy that Mbeumo had such a good game. I think it's really good for new signings to have good games. I think Mbeumo has probably had the best start, but Cunha's had a good start. Hopefully we'll see more from Sesko. Of course, concerns over the goalkeeper, but we're looking to bring in a goalkeeper, so that should be fine. I thought Bruno did have a good first half and showed his quality. I thought Mount has started the season really well, and you can understand why Mount is playing and why Sesko is struggling to get in the team. And look, for the most part, we've played well in the Premier League this season. That's the mad thing. And 4 points isn't the end of the world. I would have liked 6 points at this stage. I think had we beat Fulham, we would have 6 points. But look, we dropped points to Arsenal, but we played well. We had a good first half versus Fulham, a bad second half. And we had a good first half today, a bad second half. It's early stages. It's going to take time for things to click. It's going to take time for the manager to learn things and adapt. Like, let's see where we are in 10 games. I've always said this. I was frustrated with Amorim after Grimsby. I'm not fully convinced, but we're still very early days. There's still good signs, but there's also a lot of bad signs. And we need to hope that we click in the next few games and we can adapt and we can do this and we can do that. But look, the most important thing is the win. And I liked the right-hand side today. The left-hand side wasn't great. Delot always seems to have a moment in him that's frustrating. He did get the assist. But you could just tell, and you just know that Mbeumo's going to be an unbelievable signing for United. So I'm glad that he got his goal. But listen, people, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.